Cola, Bausch& Lomb, Olympus Medical, Jaguar, Anthem Insurance, and Honeywell, to name a few. The insights he'll be sharing today are hard-earned from his own 20 years in high-end media sales, where he achieved Salesperson of the Year for Condé Nast. As a fun fact, he met Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps and has a story about what Michael taught him. He's the author of 4 books, his most recent title, The Sale is in the Tail. Additionally, he is the host of a weekly podcast, The Successful Pitch, that is heard in over 60 countries. His TED Talk, Be the Lifeguard of Your Own Life, has over 1 million views. So with that fantastic introduction, it is my honor to welcome John. John, take it away.
I'm shivering, taking my 3rd cold shower of the day, thinking maybe this isn't working out so great. How did I end up taking 3 cold showers? Well, I read some research that if you take a cold shower, it fights fat, burns, reduces inflammation, and can also fight depression. It had me, it burns fat. So I thought, oh, I'm just going to take cold showers and stop working out altogether. That didn't really work out so well during the pandemic. I put on a few pounds. So maybe relying just on research to make our decisions or to try and get other people to change their behavior is not the best way to go. When in fact, there's a new way that people have forgotten about, and it's using storytelling to get people to be magnetically drawn to what you're telling and what you're saying. So picture this. I'm 18 years old, sitting on my lifeguard perch in the suburbs of Chicago on a hot summer day, zinc oxide on my nose, mirror sunglasses, and a whistle around my neck. Normally, my job as the lifeguard is to just make sure that the kids don't run on wet cement. But this one day, a girl was at the edge of the diving board, looking down with a great deal of trepidation. That alone made me sit up on the edge of my lifeguard perch. And I looked down and she's diving in the water and she's flailing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so panicked. There's no way that I throw her a buoy, she's going to see it. So instead I dove in, pulled her to the side, and that's what allowed me to save her. She was choking and coughing, but I knew she was going to be okay. And while that event happened many decades ago, the lesson that I learned as a lifeguard to not panic and stay calm has served me my entire career. That's an example of telling a story when you open up a presentation or a conversation or an interview you're having to get a job. When you tell a story, you pull people in, and ideally they see themselves in that story with you. So what do we want to talk about in terms of being better storytellers? Well, the first part is this concept of sitting around campfires. You know, it's literally in our DNA. When we all lived in caves, people sat around the globe campfires and painted pictures and told stories. Now we sit around the globe of PowerPoints and tell stories. So our brains are wired for storytelling. I'm going to give you a 5-step revenue rockstar roadmap for you to have as tools that you can start using right away to make yourselves better salespeople and better storytellers. So this concept, as Sherry mentioned, of focusing on your own progress and meeting Michael Phelps. Here's a picture of him at the Olympics. When I was a competitive swimmer, there was a race. They would line us up in heats, and there was always this guy that beat me. And in this particular race, the gun goes off, we dive in, and we're swimming. We put our head down, and we pull it up, take a breath, and put it back down. And I stayed focused on the wall. My competitor pulled his head up out of the wall to see if he was ahead of or behind me. And that extra half a second of looking while I stayed focused on the wall caused me to win. So I thought, when we focus on our own progress, we win. And if you're comparing yourself to other people all the time, you're not focused on being the best you can be. When Jeff Bezos, who remembers when Amazon just sold books? But there was a time when they just sold books, they had 500 employees, and he said to his team, we're not going to worry about being as big as Barnes and Noble, which had 2,500 employees at the time on brick and mortar. We're just going to focus on being the best online bookseller we can be. And we all know what happened from that wonderful focus. Now, for me, having sold advertising for Condé Nast I was based in Los Angeles at the time, I got a call from the New York office saying, InStyle Magazine and Vanity Fair are having these amazing Oscar parties. You're in LA, help us figure out what we should be doing. And I said, well, we shouldn't have another Oscar party. What if we had a party at the Golden Globes event? And the editor, Stefano Tonki, loved that idea because he said, that's the beginning of the award season and everyone's in a good mood because no one's lost anything yet. So we had this event before the Oscars, and at the Chateau Marmont, which is a more exclusive boutique hotel, which fit the brand of W Magazine. And we got celebrities to attend, and it allowed us to stay focused on our own progress and our own brand versus going where the competitors were, and it was all cluttered. Now, as Sherry alluded to, I did get to meet Michael Phelps in my sales career. I was in Los Angeles, and Speedo was in my territory. And I went to them and I said, I see you have a line of sportswear coming out. Would you consider advertising that in my fashion magazine? And they said, no. And I said 2 magic words for those of you who like to take notes. What if? Because when you ask somebody a what if question, after you've gotten a no or an objection, you get them into their mind of imagination. I said, what if we treated your sportswear like it was high fashion? We could have the models wearing it around a hotel swimming pool, and you could invite Michael Phelps since he's on your payroll during the Olympics. They love the idea. I got the sale. And more importantly for me as a former lifeguard, I got to meet Michael Phelps. And I went up to him and I said, Michael, everyone says that you're so successful because your feet are like fins and your lung capacity is bigger than the average person. I'm guessing there's something else. He said, oh, yes, John. When I was younger, my coach said to me, Michael, are you willing to work out on Sundays? Yes, coach. Great. We just got 52 more workouts than the competitors. So now the question is for all of you. What are you willing to do that the competition isn't willing to do or hasn't even thought about doing? When I was working with Banana Republic, they said, we're never going to be Neiman Marcus in terms of pricing or luxury, but we would like to redefine what luxury is. And they came up with a concept that luxury is giving people something that unexpected that maybe doesn't even have a price associated with it. So what they did at their flagship stores in San Francisco, Union Square, and Manhattan, Rockefeller Center, was when you went in there, there was someone there saying, would you like to charge your phone while you shop? What an unexpected luxury. And somebody's going to guard your phone so it's safe, and people did it. The unexpected outcome was sales went up 23% because people would come back and say, oh, my phone's not fully charged. I guess I'll keep shopping. And they ended up buying more. So that Michael Phelps story is a great way for you to say to yourself, what can I do that other people haven't thought about doing or aren't willing to do? Now, this concept here of, do you sometimes feel like an ostrich or a peacock when you wake up in the morning? We're going to take a little poll right now, and it's going to be so easy. And Aaron's going to pull that poll up for all of us. Just type in or click on O or P. What do you feel like? Do you feel like an ostrich? You just want to go back to bed and bury your head in the sand? Or do you feel like a peacock? Here's the good news. You have a choice. If you start off feeling like an ostrich, but you go, you know what? This afternoon, I'm going to be a peacock. You can constantly change your mind. You don't have to stay stuck in all of that stuff. So that's, it looks like we'll give 10 more seconds for anybody who wants to vote. Just O or P. It couldn't be easier. I'm not even asking you to spell ostrich. Let me know what you feel like. It looks like we have 63%. Is everyone able to see these results? 63% peacocks. I love it. Again, remember, you don't have to stay in the ostrich mode if you don't want to. It's empowering for you. All right. Thanks, Aaron. Next. Now, my career has not always been linear. I had a successful sales career at Condé Nast for many years, and then 2008 came along, which was this big mortgage crisis that impacted a lot of things, including luxury advertising. And I got this call from my boss in New York when I was in LA saying, we've decided we have to lay off everyone in the outside offices and 30% of the New York staff. And please be out by the end of the day. It was like a kick to the gut. And I thought, my lifeguard training kicked in. I chose not to panic and stay calm, even though I was shaken up. And I said, well, don't you need a status report to know where these ads are scheduled to run and what page and what issue? She said, well, that would be great. But everyone else is so angry, they're storming out. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I've watched my clients get married and have kids. Little did I know that that one decision to leave on a good note would affect me 2 years later. So now I'm at the situation where I need to find a job. And a friend of mine said, you know, this reminds me of what happened to the silent movie stars. Some of them made it from silent movies to talkies, and some did not. You have to decide if you're going to be that person that embraces new technology. And of course, now there's all kinds of new technology. Some of us have to decide if we're going to learn blockchain or what the heck is an NFT. There's always going to be something new to learn. And I got a job selling digital ads for the website, The Daily Beast. And it was tough. I had to learn a new language and break new ground. And then 2 years later, I got the call from my old boss saying, we now have a new editor. We're now selling ads in print and digital. Would you come back? And I thought, if I come back, I'm not coming back with any fear. Because I'd already had fear of not making my quota, the magazine going out of business. And so what I realized was, when you come back, you can't have fear and creativity going on at the same time. And because there was no fear, I was able to come up with creative ideas. And the creative idea I came up with was going to Guess Jeans, which had been an advertiser. And I said, you know, your 30th anniversary is coming up at the same year the magazine's 40th anniversary is. What if we did a joint celebration? Drew Barrymore's been on the cover of W. She's also been a guest model. We could have that event with pictures like that posted next to each other, and we could invite young Hollywood to come and do a joint celebration. They loved the idea, so much so that they created a special supplement with every page being a different guest model from each year that got inserted into W's anniversary issue. Well, at a time when print sales were down, I got this exclusive $500,000 sale, and I actually ended up winning Salesperson of the Year, not just for the magazine, but for the entire company of 400 global salespeople. And as I was standing there holding this award, I thought, wait a minute, I'm the same person that got laid off 2 years ago. And that's what launched my personal mission to help as many people as possible get off this self-esteem roller coaster, where you only feel good if your numbers are up or things are going well, and bad if things are not going well. Because when you start to think of yourself as the movie director of your own life, you can zoom out and realize that you're bigger than any one thing happening to you at any one time. Because in sales, you definitely have to deal with ups and downs. And what I want to tell people is, a lot of us might feel like we're perfectionists. If you feel like you're a perfectionist, just throw yes in the chat. Let me see how many perfectionists we have on the call here today. Yeah, I'm a perfectionist. Yes, yes, yes. I'm obsessed with, if I'm not perfect, I beat myself up. Anybody want to just type in the chat? Let me see that. Instead, I'm going to give those of you, Yopo says yes, a new term to reframe yourself. Instead of a perfectionist, think of yourself as a progressionist. Someone where our brains are wired, overcoming perfectionism, to celebrate progress. That's why Fitbit works, or video games, you're at a new level. So this becomes your way to get off this self-esteem roller coaster, and a great way to open up meetings. Instead of focusing on what's not working, open up your meetings every week with celebrating progress and going around the room. It doesn't necessarily have to be a sale. It could be progress you're making towards that. So the first step is to become a progressionist and let go of this perfectionist. Now, I've created something I call the 5-5-5 rule. As we know, life in general can be full of disappointment, frustration, things that make you angry. So again, if you zoom out and think of yourself as a movie director, you say to yourself, will this matter 5 minutes from now, 5 hours from now, 5 days from now? So let's say you get cut off in traffic. Some people lose their mind. Other people let it go right away. If you're still thinking about being cut off in traffic 5 days from now, that's a problem. So instead, start to use this tool. It's easy to remember and it's easy to start using. And you can start using it with your friends when they get a rejection or a no. And say, you know what? We'll talk about this for 5 hours and then we're going to let it go. We're not going to keep obsessing on it, because they've shown that the more resilient you are, the faster you get back up after you've been knocked down, the better you are mentally and in your performance. Now, this tool can also work in your personal life. I know when my dad died over 10 years ago, I wish I had this tool. I could go back to my younger self and say, you know, 5 days from now, you're still going to be pretty devastated. But how about 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years from now? Well, 5 years from now, you'll still miss them, but I promise you, you won't be this sad. So let's start embracing 555 as a new tool in your toolbox to add to this growing roadmap that we're working on. Now, part of that is becoming more confident in who you are. And I have a tool where I call it stacking your moments of certainty. So if you want to write down 2 or 3 times when you knew you nailed something, you got into Franklin University. Remember how happy and proud you were when that happened? You got hired as your job, whatever it is, you did really well on a test or something. Stack those moments of certainty like you're an air traffic controller, and then write down the feeling you had. I felt happy, proud, exhilarated next to it. And that's what you put in your head before you go in to present or interview or pitch anything, so the negative self-talk doesn't kick in. Now, you might have heard about this superhero pose where, and if you want to do it with me, fantastic. I actually brought my own superhero cape to show you what this looks like, because let me see if I can get it on right. This never happens to Clark Kent, does it? All right, here we go. So you stand up and you put your hands on your hip. You can see the big S here. Yep. And you put your hands on your hip, and I got to get this on my other shoulder so it looks really good. You start stacking your moments of certainty. They've done research where if you hold this pose for 2 minutes, your testosterone goes up, even if you're a woman. And your cortisol stress level goes down. So they do studies where they have people shoot baskets and then hold the pose for 2 minutes, they dunk more baskets. Doctors hold this pose before surgery. Now people say 2 minutes seems like a long time. So what I want to encourage you is to say, stack those moments of certainty while you're holding this pose. So you're holding the pose, hands on the hip like Wonder Woman or Superman, and you say, this is what I'm going to do. And remember, I have teams doing this before a big presentation, and it actually helps their confidence level. All right, so there we go. We are now all officially superheroes. Okay. So this second step of this roadmap is 555 it. Become more resilient, get back up faster. When I gave my TEDx talk, Be the Lifeguard of Your Own Life, I followed a speaker named Bonnie St. John, and she had lost the lower half of her left leg. And she was standing on stage with her Paralympic medals around her neck and her skirt on so you could see her prosthetic leg. And she told the story of you had to go down 2 mountains and they measured the average of your 2 times. The first mountain, she was the fastest. The second mountain was icier and everybody was falling and she also fell. And then they took the 2 times together and they said, oh, you came in second place. While you were the fastest going down, you were not the fastest getting back up. We all need to get back up fast when we get a rejection or a no in sales or any other part of our career. So 555 is your tool to get back up fast. Let it go 5 minutes, 5 hours, or 5 days. Now I'm going to give you 4 genres of storytelling, a movie that uses it, and a brand that uses it, so that you can start to think about what genre of storytelling do I want to be using. So the first genre is the get rich quick, right? And also this concept of rags to riches. We hear all these stories of, doing that. Obviously, the movie that does rags to riches is Cinderella. She's sitting by the fireplace and then suddenly this fairy godmother comes in and transforms her. Well, sometimes as a salesperson, your product or service could be like the magic wand coming in and transforming that person's life with an incredible product or service that solves a big problem. When I was speaking at the Coca-Cola CMO Summit, I met the CMO of Auntie Anne's pretzels that are sold at airports and malls. And I said to him, how did this all start? And he said, well, she sold pretzels at one farmer's market. Rags to riches. Oprah Winfrey started off very poor in the South and now is one of the richest women in the world. Rags to riches. So start to think about, is this a genre that fits my journey or my story? The second one is The Quest. The Lord of the Rings is a movie that is all about find that ring. Lexus's tagline used to be the pursuit of perfection. It was an endless pursuit. Then the third one is rebirth. It's a Wonderful Life. It's reinventing himself. Give me another chance. Prudential says that your retirement is your third act. It is not just a continuation of middle age. Let us help you plan your rebirth. And the fourth and final genre is the decision to stay home or travel. Well, in the movie The Wizard of Oz, if Dorothy had listened to Auntie Anne and just gone down into the cellar, there'd be no movie. But in fact, she goes on this adventure and then comes back and tells everyone about it. Expedia is using this for their branding, saying, go book a trip with us, have this incredible time, come back and tell all your friends about it. So those are the four genres, four movies that use it. You'll never see a movie the same now. You'll be thinking, oh, that's the Quest genre, or that's Rags to Riches. Now, I want all of you to start thinking of yourselves that your brain is either a playlist, or if you're a little older, like I am, a jukebox. We would push a number and a letter and out will come a song. But instead of a song, you want to have a story that's going to come out. You can't tell the same story to everybody. You need a separate story for the different kinds of potential buyers you have. So the story you would tell a CEO is very different than the story, let's say, you'd tell a project manager. So having multiple stories to the right person at the right time is the key to becoming a black belt in storytelling. So a lot of people freeze up when they go, well, I'm not even sure I have a story. And I said, oh, everyone has a story. You think about a bad holiday meal you had, or a bad airplane trip that got canceled and delayed. There's all kinds of things happening in our lives all the time that give us our own story that people can relate to. Now, sometimes you might get nervous sharing your story. And I have decided to put some faces on these fears. And the first one is the fear of rejection. And obviously we know that we get rejected in sales often. As when you compare it to sports, and I know Aaron's a big sports guy, if a batter's hitting 30% of the times he's at bat, that's considered a great ball player. The same is true in sales. You're not going to get a home run every time. So the fear of rejection is huge. It prevents people from getting into sales. And this whole series is encouraging people to enter it. So how do you overcome the fear of rejection? Never reject yourself. Oh. So when I used to sell advertising and someone would say, oh, we're going with a different brand, I'd be like, oh, maybe another salesperson could have gotten a yes. Or maybe they're right. Maybe that other product is better than I. Don't do that to yourself. Never reject yourself or what you're selling. The second fear is the fear of failure. One of my guests on my podcast said, failure is just feedback. You keep going until you get a zombie idea so great it won't die. And the third fear is the fear of the unknown. When I started my podcast, I didn't know how to edit it or get it up on iTunes. So I found someone that does that for me. So the solution to the fear of the unknown is don't go it alone. So when you put some faces on whatever fears you're having about sharing your story or trying something new, you have a solution now to overcome that. So start to think of yourselves like a journalist when you're coming up with your own story. Who, what, where, when, paint that picture. Get us involved with the details of where you're from and who you are. So that becomes your third step on this rockstar roadmap, your own story of origin. I know I've worked with architecture firms when they have to present against other firms to win new business. And instead of just saying, my name is Bob, I've been here 10 years, I do this and this and this, I worked with them and I said, Bob, what made you become an architect? And he said, oh, well, when I was 10 years old, I played with Legos. Now I have a 10-year-old, I play with my son. I still am passionate about it. I said, great. How about you, Sue? Where did you work before here? She goes, I was in the Israeli army. I said, okay. I bet you know about focus and discipline. And since if this team gets the project, you're in charge of making sure this thing comes on time and under budget. You've got the perfect background. When you have a story of origin and you ask your potential buyer their story of origin, how'd you get into this? You're bonding and creating rapport, which is a much better way to do it than just talking about sports or the weather. Now, the next part of all this is a Super Bowl commercial from last year where they're, Kia is selling an electric car, and talk about something that doesn't usually evoke emotion, but they created an electric dog in the commercial that was chasing the electric car, and the driver of the car saw that the dog was jumping midair and then ran out of electricity. So he recharged the dog like he recharged his Kia car, electric car, and brought the dog back to life and was the hero of the story. Now, the reason I tell that story is because I want all of you to remember this. When you tell a story, you are not the hero of that story. Your client is. Think of yourself like Yoda in Star Wars or a Sherpa helping someone climb Mount Everest. The hero in this commercial was the driver of the car, and that's why people want to get into that story. Now, another example from this current Super Bowl was a very funny.
Hey, corporate types, let's just stop calling each other rock stars. You're a rock star. You are a rock star. Rock stars, please.
So I thought that was especially funny since I'm encouraging all of you to think of yourselves as revenue rock stars. I think we can be revenue rock stars, not the legitimate rock star that some of these people are, but it's a fun play on words, obviously. So now we're going to do another poll, and Aaron's going to bring this poll up for us. And the fun part of this is we're going to vote on who do you think Franklin University is named after? Is it Alex Franklin? Aretha? So again, this is the story of origin. What is the company story? In this case, Franklin University is the company. And yes, 86% of you are correct. It was, in fact, I can't think of a better person to name a university after, and all the attributes that go along with that. All right. So we'll stop sharing those results and go here. Let's see, share results.
Going to step in here just a second. It looks like John might be having a little bit of technical difficulties, so we'll stick with him just for a few minutes here as he gets figured out. John, we lost you just for a few minutes there with internet cut out.
My internet cut out? Okay. Am I back?
We have you back and ready to go. So we saw the results of who Franklin was named after.
Okay, great. Thanks, Aaron. So the whole point of that is a company story is just as important as your own personal story. Now we're going to go to the third part of the roadmap, which is, and this is my sort of black and white moment of the Wizard of Oz. Case studies have been around forever. And we're going to turn them into case stories. So instead of even the word study, as you're all students or alumni, remember studying for finals is a lot of left brain hard work. Stories, on the other hand, make us feel something. So a case story has 4 parts. The exposition. Again, paint that picture, who, what, where, when. The second part is the problem. And the problem here, the stakes have to be high enough in the story for you to care about the story. So here's for you who like to take notes. The better you describe someone's problem and show empathy for it, the more they think you have their solution, which is the third part of this case story. And then the final secret part is the resolution. What is life like for someone after they've hired you or bought your product or service? Imagine if the Wizard of Oz ended when Dorothy got in the balloon to go back to Kansas, the end. But no, that wonderful scene where she's like, oh, there's no place like home, and you were there, and you were there. That's why that story is a classic. So I'm going to give you some examples of case stories in action. Honeywell is one of my clients, and they had this fan that goes in operating rooms, and they were talking about how fast it's worked and particles and all that. And I said, well, let's turn that into a story. So let's start by asking this question. What happens if the fan doesn't work? And they said, well, the patient could get sick, with infection. I said, okay, great. That's a good starting point. And then I asked this other question I would love for you to write down if you're the kind of person that takes notes. I asked the question, anything else? 2 words, anything else. If you start to think of yourself like a doctor when you're a salesperson, you go to the doctor, they ask you a lot of questions about your history and how long this pain's been going on. You need to be really digging deep. And if you're the person that digs deeper than the other people to uncover not just the first problem they give you, but multiple problems, you're going to be a better salesperson. I said, anything else go wrong with it? Well, now that you ask about it, they're cutting on people with lasers and there's smoke. And if that fan doesn't work properly, the doctors and nurses could be exposed to secondhand smoke damage over time. I said, that's a story. And this is pre-pandemic. We're going to tell that story to the HR people and not be talking just to purchasing people, that this fan is a safety issue for the doctors and nurses. And once we had that story and told it to HR, they were no longer seen as a commodity. Now, another client I worked with is an architecture firm who was renovating an airport. And here's the story that allowed them to win the Pittsburgh airport renovation. There was $1 billion at stake. And they tell this story. 5 years ago, JetBlue at JFK hired us to renovate the terminal for 4 years. And during that time, from 9 o'clock at night till 9 in the morning, we had to rip up all the tiles. And we had all the vendors on call in case something went wrong. And sure enough, at 2 in the morning, a fuse blew. We had the vendor there, fixed it. And at 8:59, the last tile went down and all of the stores got to open on time. And now a year later, sales are up 24% because we've designed a place that people are attracted to come in and spend money and shop. The people at Pittsburgh Airport saw themselves in that story and ended up hiring Gensler because of that. You see all 4 parts? We know the name of the airport, how long ago it was, the problem we described of having to rip off those tiles. Now, the old way of doing this would have been to say something like, we use critical thinking to anticipate problems. But instead, we showed that in the story by saying all the vendors were on call. And there's a little bit of drama. And the last tile goes down, the solution. But the resolution to that story is sales are up, that they measured that. And that's one of the things that really impressed the Pittsburgh Airport people was, gosh, if we're raising and spending $1 billion worth of taxpayer money, we love to see that some of that money is coming back. Olympus has a medical division. And they said, we have this tool that makes surgeries go 30% faster. And it's so logical. We just don't understand why the doctors aren't using it or buying it. I said, well, there's no story. That's a left brain stat. People buy emotionally and then back it up with logic. So I said, when you tell a story, we need to make sure that there's 3 C's happening. Is it clear? Is it concise? And is it compelling? That is your little checklist for when you tell a story, because if it's not clear and you confuse people with acronyms, they're not going to tell you they're confused, they're just not going to buy. Why does it need to be concise? So that people can remember your story and repeat it for the meeting after the meeting. What do I mean by that? Well, in the case of the hospital, they heard from Olympus and 2 of their competitors. And then they have a meeting after the meeting and they say, well, what do you think? Which vendor should we go with? And they say, well, they all sound the same. I guess we should go with the cheapest. But Olympus Medical told this case story and people remembered it and repeated it to other people who didn't even hear all the presentations, and they became their brand ambassadors. And finally, why does it need to be compelling? We need to tug at heartstrings to have the emotional connection to get people to want to buy from us. So this is the story Olympus Medical now says. Imagine how happy Dr. Higgins was down at Long Beach Memorial 6 months ago when he could go out to the patient's family in the waiting room an hour earlier than expected. And if you've ever waited for someone you love to come out of surgery, you know every minute feels like an hour. And the doctor came out an hour early and put them out of their waiting misery and said, good news, the scope shows they don't have cancer, they're going to be fine. Then the doctor turns to the Olympus rep and says, you know, this is why I became a doctor, from moments like this. Now the Olympus rep tells that case story to another doctor at another hospital who sees himself in the story and says, you know what? That's why I became a doctor too. I want your equipment. Olympus said to me, that story gives us chills. Not only are we not telling stories, it never occurred to us to make a patient's family a character in the story. Who's the hero of that story? The doctor, not the rep, not the equipment. So as you start to see these different kinds of stories across different genres and industries, you can start to see how whoever tells the best story is in fact the one that gets the sale. Now our third and final poll, and hopefully I won't freeze during this one. This is going to be a nice vibe of which of these are true accomplishments. You know that game, 2 Truths and a Lie? It's a little version of this, of Franklin alumni that, you know, you're going to be part of or you already are part of. Being appointed to serve on the National Security Telecommunications Committee, invented a formula for babies, sat on the bench. Oh, okay. Which one is true? Dun, 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 dun. 5 more seconds. Put your votes in. Well, I am proud to announce they're all true. So congratulations to all the students and all the alumni for being at such an amazing university that has these incredible accomplishments. You're obviously in great company. You should have a lot of confidence going out and interviewing. And if you decide to have sales as a career, even if you don't, you still have to sell yourself to get hired. You have to sell your ideas to get promoted. So you are all at the right place. That's for sure. All right. Stop sharing and see if this is going to let me go. All right. So that's an example of the case story in action. All right. So here it all is. One quick recap. You're going to open your meetings in your own weeks with celebrating your own progress. You're going to 5 things when things get frustrating or you get rejected. You're going to work on your own story of origin, what made you major in whatever you're majoring in. Tell the company story, the Franklin University story with pride now, as well as have a case story of a situation where you had to overcome a challenge. And that's how you can either sell something or yourself. Now, again, this step 1 on being a progressionist instead of perfectionist is a great reminder of what am I focusing on, what I'm not doing. Like if you are climbing Mount Everest and you're halfway up, you have a choice. You can look down and go, look how far we've come, or you can look up and go, oh, look how far we have to go. I focus on celebrating the progress. Step 2, 5 it, right? Just let things fall off your back like water does a duck. Because when you bounce back up, you're more present for the next one. Your own story of origin. Think of yourself like a journalist, and that's how you bond with people. And you can always start with who inspired you. Was it a parent? Was it a teacher? Maybe somebody at Franklin University inspired you to get into whatever your career is. And of course, the company story. You now have a lot of pride in where you went to school or where you're currently going to school to share when you go out into the world. And when you work for a company, even if it's your own company, you still want to have your own company story of values. Here's the Tom's Shoes creator. And you probably know this story that if you buy a pair of Tom's shoes, they donate a pair. to a third world country of children. So the first time he went to Nordstrom's and he asked them if they wanted to buy the shoes, he just focused on the shoes and they said, no, I don't think so. And then he was going to one of his first trips to go back to Ecuador to give out more shoes. And he saw this mother running alongside the bus with her 3 children and she was crying. And he said to the translator, why is she crying? He goes, I don't know, we'll find out. So they get off the bus. The translator talks to the mom and she's holding up an old beat up men's dress shoe, like size 10. She goes, this is what my children had to use before you came and gave us shoes. Our little 10-year-old boy would put his little feet in this man's dress shoe and he'd have to shuffle to school because it was too big. And then he'd shuffle home. And then he'd give that pair of shoes to his brother the next day. So the kids could only go to school once every 3 days. Now they have shoes that fit. They can all go to school every day and they run to school with so much joy. He told that story to the Nordstrom's buyer. And the Nordstrom's buyer got a tear in her eye. I want all the shoes. This is an example of a company story and the values in action. And again, the case story instead of a case study. I'm going to leave you with one last case story. Olympus Medical also sells 4K resolution monitors, and they were talking about pixels. And it's now they tell this story. Dr. Peterson at a rural hospital in Minnesota, which is not exactly known for cutting edge technology, decided to test our 4K resolution monitor. And Blake, the sales rep, was in the room with him in case he had any questions. He happened to be operating on an extremely overweight patient, which caused the surgery to be at risk. During the surgery, Dr. Peterson inadvertently, because of the patient's weight situation, hits a bleeder. There's an audible gasp in the room. Everyone's looking at a sea of red. How is Dr. Peterson going to find that bleeder source in time to save the patient? Dr. Peterson calmly looks up at the monitor where he can see subtle color changes between oxygenated blood and non-oxygenated blood. And that allows him to find the source of the bleeder and save the patient's life. After the surgery, Dr. Peterson said to Blake, the rep, you know, we don't always need a monitor like this, but boy, when we need it, we need it. You think they're selling more monitors now? You bet they are. Now, one of the interesting things about this particular case story is they got an objection that this monitor is very expensive for us to be buying if we're not going to use it or need it every surgery. So knowing that, I had them put that objection into the story so that Dr. Peterson literally says, we don't always need it. And then the doctors see themselves in that story and say, man, if I need this 1 out of 100 times, 1 out of 1,000 times, I don't want to be losing a patient because I didn't have this monitor. So that's how stories can tug at heartstrings and get people's objections answered even before you start finishing your presentation. Now, this is your roadmap I'm giving you on how to go from invisible to irresistible. You know, if you sales, they typically have to do projections. I have 20 people at 10%, this many people at 50%, this many people at 90%. These are my projections. I do all the math. Here's how much I'm going to sell this month and this quarter and this year. But nobody thinks of themselves like a percentage. So if you put your empathy hat on and start saying, where do people see me? Am I invisible? They've never heard of me or my company? Or am I insignificant? I don't know which is worse. Or are they interested? And this is where so many people get tripped up. They go, oh, I'm interested, send me information. They tell their boss, I think I'm gonna make a sale. And then it's crickets. It's like, I call this being stuck at the friend zone at work. And so how do we get out of the friend zone at work? You tell a story that intrigues somebody to want to know more. The what if is a great way to get out of the friend zone at work. Start painting a picture. And then you get up to the irresistible level. This is where clients love you, they're your references, but like any relationship, you can start to take it for granted. So I want to encourage all of you to start using this roadmap. If you're currently in sales, write down 2 or 3 clients on each rung of the ladder. Because, you know, we've all had this experience on LinkedIn where someone goes, oh, I'd like to connect with you. And then boom, I'd like to sell you something. Nobody does that in dating. No one goes on a blind date and then asks somebody to marry them at the coffee shop. And yet people are doing this in business. So figure out where your clients see you on this ladder and what story you can tell to move up the ladder. So storytelling combined with this will make you a stronger salesperson. In fact, soft skills make you strong. What are the soft skills? Empathy, listening, and storytelling. All three of those soft skills, you have the hard skills of going to school to become an architect or lawyer or whatever you're doing. But when you combine those soft skills, that's what's going to make you a revenue rock star. And the final story I want to leave you with is what has happened in the art world. On the painting you see with the man with the hat is a Picasso painting. Artificial intelligence has found a painting underneath the painting. And a lot of people didn't know this existed, but I had heard about this story from Françoise Gillot when I met her several years ago. And she was in her 20s in the 1940s when Picasso was in his 60s. They had two children, Claude and Paloma. Paloma Picasso, you might know of her jewelry and Tiffany's. And Francois told me during the 1940s, there was a shortage of canvases and they would paint over their paintings because the urge to create was so great. As I was in her apartment in New York, she's showing me all of her paintings and Picasso's paintings. And she says, the one painting you're looking at there is the fifth one I did. I think my favorite is the third one underneath it. I thought, no one's going to see that. But maybe that third painting
Mike, Joe.
a little bit underneath by telling this story. So the whole goal is, if you're going to start telling stories and thinking of yourselves as artists who tell stories, you might as well become the Picasso of pitches. And instead of always be closing the old way of selling ABC, I want to invite you to do a new acronym, which is ABK. Always be kind. I have it on a t-shirt. When I look down, it reminds me not to say mean things to myself or anybody else. So ABK, always be kind to the way you talk to yourself and other people. It's been an honor and a privilege to be here. I want to thank Sherry and Aaron for all their help and in inviting me. And if any of you want to follow me on Instagram and get more motivational videos, just take out your phone and scan this.
John, thank you so much. You were absolutely incredible today. I was scribbling notes in my notepad of the zombie idea. I love that phrase, the
Great.
555. I really think people get derailed in their efforts by their emotions. And I think the 555 is a great way to make sure that you stay on task. So thank you for sharing that. The anything else question, great idea. Don't know why we're not all doing it. So I want to, as I kind of do my close here, I'd like to open it up to the group. If anybody has a question you'd like to ask John, please put it in the chat. I want to, obviously, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Christina. Let me ask a question just to kind of get the ball rolling here as
Sure.
some folks are thinking about questions they might have for you. What is an elevator story versus an elevator pitch? They are
Yes.
different.
They are. I'm created the concept of an elevator story because I think we should kill the elevator pitch right here and now. It's boring. It's robotic. It sounds like you're reading from a brochure. It's not authentic. And so I teach people how to tell an elevator story so that people are intrigued enough to go, oh, wow, tell me more. So it's the first three steps are, you just start the sentence with, you know how. Because that's how we talk about, you know how this winter just seems like it's never going to end or whatever. And then you say, salespeople, tech and healthcare in particular, struggle not to be seen as a commodity. I'm known as the pitch whisperer. I give keynotes on storytelling, and after hiring me, they all become revenue rock stars. That's my elevator story. So the first step is you know how, then I describe who I help, salespeople. The third step is the problem they have, the struggle is the word. And then I get to, I'm known as the pitch whisperer and how I help them. And the fifth step is what life is like for them afterwards. So the whole goal is people are like, wait, what's a pitch whisperer? I know what a horse whisperer is. I even know what a dog whisperer is. It doesn't matter. They've intrigued them enough with that little elevator story to want to know more.
Excellent, excellent. I do have two questions that have come in.
Yes.
Dr. Thomas has asked, what was the movie associated with The Quest? And Jesse has asked, how did you get yourself into sales?
Sure. The movie that's associated with the quest is The Lord of the Rings, where they're always going, I get that ring, get that precious, get my precious, get the ring. And the whole movie's about getting that ring. And I got into sales because I majored in advertising, and I was completely fascinated with show business and business being combined and what motivated people to change their behavior. And my actual first job in sales was work as a kid selling newspapers. Back in the day when people read newspapers, I had a newspaper route and I would knock on doors and convince people to subscribe. And then I'd be the one getting up at crack of dawn and delivering them in the Midwest suburb winters. And then I would be the one to go knock on the door to collect the money. And then cut to my days at university, I was selling advertising for the school newspaper, and I'd go to the local pizza place and say, you know, if you put a coupon in this ad, we can track how many more pizzas you're selling. And, you know, the students are coming here already, but I bet with an ad and a coupon, and the person owning the, you know, pizza place literally was writing me a check from their personal checkbook. So the ad had to work. So that's how I got into advertising sales.
Excellent story. I love that. I do have one more question. Actually, two more. Dr. Thomas has a follow-up. Which of your books would you recommend that the attendees start with? And then Jopa is asking, hello, Jopa, by the way, is asking, is there a difference between selling a product versus selling a personal brand, such as a program?
Okay. Well, Michelle, it's a little bit like Sophie's Choice. All my books are like my children. I think after hearing my talk, the one I would recommend is the current one first. It's a story about storytelling. It's a business fable set in Austin. So it really is all my years of experience put into this book. So people are really saying, I love the characters. And then at the end is all the methodology that I covered today in the book. So that would be the first one I'd start with. So if you sell a product versus selling a brand or a program, you're still storytelling. You still want to use that same revenue rock star. Your story, how you got into it, you know, the company story, and then finally a case story. So use that structure no matter what it is you're selling. Obviously, the stories are different and the reasons why people buy are different in the story, but the structure of the story is still the same.
Excellent. If you have another question, I'm going to do a kind of a closing here, but please feel free. We still have a couple minutes if you want to put a question in. I wanted to say, if you enjoyed today's speaker series, please take a moment to fill out the survey that you're going to receive as soon as this is over. It really helps us to be able to provide feedback to John, but to also let us know if we're meeting your expectations. Are we giving you the presentations you want to see? If you have ideas for other presentations, we are obviously open to those. We want to make sure that we're giving you the experience that you are hoping for. If you liked today's, which I can't imagine that you wouldn't, we also invite you back next month. On March 22nd, we'll be hosting Michael Vickers. He's going to talk about selling in turbulent times, strategies and tactics to employ when no one is buying, which I think is also a very interesting topic. If you go to www.franklin.edu/leadership/sales speaker series, you can find all of the information. The registration will be live tomorrow. We also have other ways to engage across the university through our Leadership Center, Global Center for Healthcare Education, Center for Public Safety and Cybersecurity Education, whole host of ways that you can engage. So we offer those. If you go to our website, franklin.edu, type in events, you'll see all of those listings. One more question. What's the biggest milestone you have achieved in sales, John?
Well, it's very difficult to pick one. Certainly one was winning Salesperson of the Year for Condé Nast.
Very impressive.
Yeah. Another one was helping Gensler win the $1 billion airport renovation at Pittsburgh. And now getting people to hire me as a speaker. I'm selling myself as a speaker and creating my own brand. And that's been very rewarding and feels thrilling when people like Sherry pick me and I get to do what I love. Excellent answer.
Excellent answer. Well, with that, we have 2 more minutes. We'll stay on the line if you have any other questions, but I want to thank everybody for being here. You know you have a good speaker when you're at the end and you still have 98% of the people still on the call. So thank you so much. John, you are, as expected, just a very dynamic speaker. I love the topics, took lots of notes. I love the idea of being empathetic to the person you're working with, to their problem, and not making it all about your data-driven. The storytelling, you know, the story about how you work in all of the data through a story, I think has to be a key to success. So thank you so much for sharing that.
My pleasure.
And everybody, hope you have a wonderful day. It is sunny where I am. I hope it is sunny where you are as well. Enjoy your day, everyone.